A few episodes ago, I talked about the falling standards of flight training in Australia. A lot of you agreed, and a lot of you shared your thoughts and concerns in the survey that we've put out, gathering data and confirming our suspicions, looking for the strengths and weaknesses so we can target things that we want to do and make our industry better. One of those, absolutely, is all about the trainer. In this episode, I'm going to have a look at instructor training, the requirements, the privileges, the limitations, and how it used to be and how we are today. And let's have a bit of a look at seeing if there's anything we can do to make things better. All that and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Standby star 9000, 1013, Kilo 25. Coordinating aileron and rudder, bank, balance, bank pressure rolling to 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there. 3 left runway 29 1231.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 131 of the Flight Training Australia podcast, the podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. I'm your host Trent Robinson. G'day, thank you again for joining me. Another amazing week of flying up here in the top end. The temperature, we woke up the other day, it was 16 degrees. We all got out our jackets, our jumpers. It was freezing. And I know that's nothing, it's barely a maximum down south on some days, but hey, up here, that's pretty chilly. So that was really nice and refreshing. It is nice to be able to go flying. Still a bit warm by the end of the day, but certainly not dripping with sweat like you are in the wet season, and nice and refreshing. Not going through the laundry basket quite as often as we normally are. So we will take that as a win. Special announcement, I guess you could say. I was very honoured. It actually happened some time ago now, with Damien Rose, who is the host of the HiflyMedia Podcast. Some of you may have listened to a few other of Damo's episodes that he's been putting out. Really great interactions and interviews with people, all about stories of aviators in Australia, and I was very humbled and honoured to be one of those. And we talked a little bit too long, and he's actually gone ahead and rather than chopping it all out, he's kept it as 2 episodes. So it's a part 1 and part 2, episode 14. And you can find that link on the HiflyMedia Podcast. You can search for that one, of course, as always, on your favourite podcast platforms. And the links will also be in the episode description, and you can find it on my Facebook page as well. So thanks, Damo. It was a really great chat, and you'll hear me talking about things which sounded like it was a little while ago, and that's because it was. Damo had some personal issues that got in the way of getting it all finished in time, but he is now back, and it was a really good chat. And if you want to know a little bit more about my background, I only talk about little bits and pieces, but this was an interview specifically with me, and I sort of, go through all sorts of different stories and a bit of my background and history so you can get to know a bit more about me there. So if you've been listening to the podcast the last few weeks, you would have heard me banging on about the conference that's coming up. It really is something that's important, and we have some fantastic presenters and a lot of chief pilots, HOFOs, CFIs, WHOs, check-in trainers from airline and all that is now coming on board and joining us, which is just fantastic. So it's going to be not just a fantastic conference, but also a fantastic networking opportunity to swap ideas, share stories. It's an open forum. So it's going to be having all the subject matter and content led by myself and Paul Strike. We've got Angela Garvey, Malcolm Sharp. We've got hopefully someone from ATSB presenting, or we'll be doing something on their behalf that they're showing us because they've got a special function on at the same time. And a few others that will be coming, Rich Stoll, of course, and Mark Greenfield, UPRT expert in the UK. And we're going to be really just laying it down and showing sort of the data, the evidence, and a little bit of education, and then throwing it open to the room. So it's going to be a really great opportunity to swap ideas, share stories, have a real think tank, and get our ideas out there down on paper that we can then take away and do something more with it. So already some fantastic people coming up to join us and making the time. And that's really what it's about, guys. If we want to make a change, if you're sitting there complaining about the amount of ICAS you're having to do in your company, if you're worried about the state of training in industry, then can I just implore you to make the effort to get there. I understand that we all can't make time or the cost and that sort of thing, and that's fine. There's also an online option as well. So grab on that instead and just try and clear the day so that you can get on board and get involved, and we'll make that as interactive as we can on the day. Obviously, we've got limited funds and resources, but we'll make it as inclusive as possible for those that can't make it up there. So from that, you've seen that we've put out a couple of surveys, and this is by no means final. If you haven't had a chance to fill in a survey and you want to have your say, please do. Look, I'm not a professional survey writer. I did the best I could to try and get the data I need, and I'm trying not to make it too one-sided. I don't know a lot of the good things, but it's these stories and reports of things that aren't going so well. It's what I really need at the moment, and that's why it might seem a little bit skewed towards negative. But everything is going to be kept in context, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because it's very interesting to see some of the reviews that we've got so far. And this is going to be all forming part of the presentation I'm going to be talking about. So today, I guess, is a little bit of a sneak preview on some of that. And it's a very topical topic, and it's a very difficult topic to cover. And by no means am I going to cover it all off today. But I just want to, from the feedback I've been getting so far, Paul and I have been looking at it. This is Paul Strike, who's running the seminar and the conference with me, and he's hosting it. We're looking at the feedback that's coming through, and it's just like, wow, we knew there were some issues, but what you guys are sharing with us is really eye-opening, and it just shows that there is a lot of work to be done in this space, and we're willing to sort of get stuck in and do what we can, but we need to be is in solidarity and a united force here to speak up and say, hey, this is what needs to be done, and really support each other doing the right thing, and also, flag it when we're seeing things that are wrong. So as we know with the history, there's we used to have CAR 5, and CAR 5 is CAR 5, Civil Aviation Regulations, Part 5, just like we now have Part 61 and Part 91, etc. So the concept of a part or a regulation that we follow as what guides our licensing and everything is not new. We've always had that. It's just been called a different name. Now, back in the day, in CAR 5 days, I've touched on this before. You needed to be a grade 3 instructor really before you could do anything else. There was only one exception to that, and that was you could be a private pilot and get a flight activity or design feature training endorsement. It was a special instrument that you were given. Now, this is important information because it very much relates to the way the training endorsements are structured today. And I've done an episode all through the instructor training endorsements. And again, in there, I've tried to explain how it works. If you've already got your training endorsements, even if you're an instructor, especially if you are an instructor of instructors, so you hold that FIR qualification, FIR, I would strongly recommend you have a listen to that, because some of the feedback that I've been getting is actually a little bit misinformed, but again, priceless information, because again, it shows that the training of the trainer is not quite up to spec. So it's not even just training the instructor. It's about training the instructor's instructor. And this is, I guess, part of the problem. We used to have some very experienced people there. There's no doubt there was some less experienced involved in time to time, but you had to be a grade 1 instructor before you could hold a lot of the privileges that we can hold today. Now, you can go straight in and be an instrument instructor, a multi-instructor, and all that. Now, I personally don't have a problem with this in concept, as long as it is delivered properly. All right. So what does that mean? What do I mean by delivered properly? Well, to get an idea of all of this, we need to have a look at the syllabus notes and the training notes that are associated with the various syllabus. And CASA have actually laid all this out for us. It's just, sometimes it's not always under our nose. And I've been going through the sample syllabi with Paul and looking at what CASA's provided for us. And some of these syllabi have all this attached to it and others do not. And interestingly enough, the ones that don't have it attached seem to be the ones that are coming up with you guys telling me that this is a problem and that's a problem. So if you're going off the sample syllabus, then I can totally understand why this is being missed, because there's just so many different places that we need to go at the moment to find the information that we need. And I had an example of this the other day conducting an IPC in the Mallard. I thought, well, the Flight Examiner Handbook, or the FEH as we call it, would be the go-to spot. It's kind of a collaboration of all the different bits and pieces that you need to know in one spot. But no, it wasn't there. I actually had to go into Part 61 to find what I needed, which I found quite surprising. So there's some fantastic documentation out there, but yes, some of it falls a bit short. And we need to know where those shortfalls are and where to go and find that information. Now, the bit I want to just say before I go into some of the feedback here is in the syllabus notes. This is the overview training notes for the design feature training endorsement, just as one example that everyone sort of said, hey, it's a bit crazy that I want to teach gas turbine engine, but I've done my training endorsement on manual propeller and retrack. And I totally agree with you. And I'm just going to read this, and then I'm going to come back to that as our working example. This is straight out of the syllabus notes. An applicant for a design feature training endorsement is required to demonstrate competency conducting instruction in a flight test conducted by a flight examiner to the standards in Part 61 manual standards. We know what it says there. The applicant must also demonstrate extensive knowledge of the units of competency published in the Part 61 MOS for the grant of the particular design features. And we can go to Subpart 61T for that. The ground and flight training summary assumes the applicant already holds a flight instructor rating with at least one other training endorsement. All right, now this bit of information is really, really key. That's talking about an add-on to someone who's already an instructor, i.e. a grade 3, grade 2, grade 1, wherever. All right, next bit. However, if this is the first training endorsement to be granted, the applicant will require extensive additional ground and flight training to prepare them for the airborne instructional activities. Any additional training as outside the scope of this sample syllabus, and reference should be made to Advisory Circular 61-07 for training material that covers topics related to an initial flight instructor rating. These will include instruction addressing the content of the unit FERC, preparatory to undertaking the FER examination, and the suite of FER tutorials in the AC 61-07. So what it's basically saying is this is referring back to a lot of the content that is in the basic syllabus for grade 3. Now, I would have thought for most people that this was logical and obvious, but given the feedback that I've been getting, clearly not. I do a lot of instructor training up here, as I keep saying, and it's not grade 3. All right, it's working on class ratings, design features. And just recently, I've told you, I was at Outback Spirit and I did a design feature training endorsement. And the intent of that design feature was to teach in the caravan. It was not to do initial delivery because they don't hold a 141. They weren't doing a caravan syllabus, but it will be for proficiency checks, OPCs, IPCs potentially. Well, it won't be IPCs because I do those, but they haven't got examiner rating in their house at the moment. But OPCs, flight reviews. Okay. Now, what are you going to do on a flight review? You're going to be doing engine failures. You're going to be stalls, glides, all this sort of stuff. Nothing to do with design feature gas turbine engine delivery. But that's what he needed as a new instructor to be able to deliver the instructional content that was intended with the rating he sought. Okay. Does that make sense? I would hope so. That should be very logical. But I know, and from all your guys' feedback, that is not what's going on. I just recently got a phone call from a good friend of mine who used to work at CASA on the East Coast, who's now running a flight school, and he was trying to find out how we could get some float training done for someone who wanted to get their design feature and then go on and do float training. That's exactly how it should be done. All right. You shouldn't be doing manual propeller pitch control to go and then teach something completely different. Now, while we're on the subject of design features, sorry if I'm going a bit quick, but I've got a lot I want to catch up on this episode. But the idea of teaching an instructor instructor skills is so that they essentially understand how to identify what needs to be taught, figure out a smart way to go about it, put together a syllabus, put together a brief or two or three, put together the best logical flow of how many flights might be required to deliver that training. This is what Instructor Training 101 is all about. And this should be included, whether it's multi-engine or instrument training for the very first time. All right. I've done this with CareFlight, RFDS, airlines. They're all doing this where their first instructor ratings are getting a multi-engine type rating and IFR instructor ratings. That makes perfectly logical sense. They've got people coming in with a whole heap of industry background and knowledge. They just need to be taught how to teach it. I've used the analogy before. You go get a subject matter expert, like a heart surgeon, and then go and teach a bunch of doctors in a university environment. 9 out of 10 times, they're not the right person. Do they know hearts? 100%, all over it. Do they know how to teach and pass on that information and knowledge? Not usually. This is what the instructor rating is about. When we do instructor training, we should be passing on information to go, these are the sort of errors and mistakes you're going to see. These are the things that we need to pass on and teach. These are the things that are absolutely crucial. These are the things we need to see 2 or 3 times. All right. And that's raising another issue, which I'm not going to go into in full here, but the flight crew licensing manual, talking about competencies and things that we should see at least twice before we sign them off. Now, I know some people are doing 1 day's flying, 1 flight, and then they get signed off. So how does that all fit in? Like I said, another discussion, watch this space. So let's have a bit of a look at some feedback that I've got, and we'll just talk a little bit about each one. But hopefully that gives just a really quick, but a more grounded, logical understanding of how CASA have put together this training. And I'm going to talk about something else in a minute, which is from the competency-based training and assessment advisory circular, which again has all the information in there, which is really, really fantastic. And I'll read that towards the end of this little discussion here. So someone has said that with their extensive flight experience, they had a really strong Part 135 background before becoming an instructor with over 2,000 hours and 500 multi-engine command time. They've been applying what they already learned in their career, and experiences in that field definitely helped. But they also acknowledged that others highlighting significant gaps where they haven't had that background has been potentially a shortfall. And someone else said, contrary to that, it would have been great to have some real world experience, even sitting up in a jump seat for a week or a professional setting prior to teaching, trying to teach something I've only really read in books and seen for maybe 1 or 2 other instructors. So this was definitely a very common thing. And CPL training is, of course, the big thing where everyone's trying to teach commercial training, yet not having done it themselves. All right. Another feedback. Transitioning between grades, i.e. grade 1, 2, 3, really posed challenges. Someone said, it felt like a big jump from grade 3 to 2. Had I actually been allowed to assess solo sends, I feel like I would have been better prepared. Now, this is a really interesting thing because this is where industry is restricting what someone can do because they don't believe CASA got it right. Now, grade 3 can send a first solo sequence other than the very first solo in that aircraft type. No problem at all. That's what the rules say. So what that means is once they have been sent solo something in an airplane, and the something is first solo circuit, training area solo, and controlled airspace, nav solo, then they can do other solos for that student. So if I, as a grade 1, sent one of my students at Darwin flight training solo, the grade 3 that's there now could send their training area solo. No problem at all. Now, do we just let them go and do that? No, of course not. We get a bunch of students together and you say, tell me when you reckon they're ready. And then we'll go and assess them and go, yep, good. You got your eye on the prize. You know what you're doing. That's what we're looking for. Well done. And they've done some time instructing, and then we let them go. The rule before used to be 100 hours of ab initio training. Now, some operators have chosen to maintain that requirement. Others are going, you know what, we don't have that many instructors around, so we're going to let them do it sooner. Now, is there a problem with that? Yes. This is all part of the delivery, a whole another topic, and one that we're definitely going to be hitting on hard in the seminar on the 1st and 2nd of July. But we need to understand the intent of what CAS has put out here, the flexibility it gives, but not abuse it with monetary requirements and delivery of on-schedule timing and everything else over and above safety and common sense. For sending students out solo, as long as they bring the aeroplane home tomorrow or ready for tomorrow's flying, you know, what sort of attitude is that? Some real problems there. All right, another critical issue is instructors teaching endorsements they've only just recently acquired themselves. A lot of them do not have experience requirements prior to delivery. You just have to have held it yourself. So someone said, many of the instructors who present for their training endorsements have only themselves just gained this initial qualification. Both of these endorsements, including instrument and night VFR, can be challenging and dangerous if not caught correctly. Also, the background theory knowledge is extensive. So there is clearly here a risk to safety and training quality. What is this all about? Well, remember, the syllabus that we deliver is all about competency-based training. Now, I'm just going to duck across to Advisory Circular 61-09. This is the Advisory Circular on Competency-Based Training and Assessment Requirements. It's all been published by CASA. And there's one bit here that just says that using competency-based training and assessment, a person is trained to meet specified standards that define the skills, knowledge, and behaviours required to safely and effectively perform a task in a particular context and is then assessed for competence against those standards. Now, this goes for an instructor teaching a commercial student. It also goes for an instructor being taught to be an instructor. And let's just look at what it says here about competency-based standards, because this becomes very, very pertinent when we just go about box-ticking exercises. Focusing on what a person must be able to do, i.e. performance-based. Ensures training is delivered to specified standards rather than ranking competence against other trainees. Competence is measured against predefined standards. That's what we've got in the MOS and the Schedule 8 tolerances there. Provides for recognition of prior learning gained from previous training or work experience. Now, this one's really pertinent, not really up to commercial training unless you're doing a conversion from a helicopter pilot or something like that, but for instructors. And this is where the multi-engine and IFR design feature stuff sort of falls into place. We're not delivering prime training for ab initio training to RPL, PPL, CPL students. We're training instructors to deliver training to pilots who already have qualifications and pilots who want to become instructors who already have extensive experience in the field, i.e. a corporate environment, a charter environment, an airline environment, aeromedical environment. Now, the last one here is the good bit. So remember, this is about a competency-based training and assessment system reflects the tasks that a person would do in real life or in the workplace. Boom. So how can a commercial instructor deliver commercial training to be of the standard or of the style that they're going to do in the job if they've never done it themselves? It just doesn't make any sense unless there's some way that we can bridge that gap. And I keep saying, I respect the system and the process and how people don't have access to charter. You got to kind of pick one or the other. Some companies are very fortunate. They have a mix of charter and instructional opportunities within the same walls. And if you can get into a job like that as an instructor, 100% go for it, because it's absolutely pertinent. It's like on-the-job work experience. And you can take that and put it into the training that you deliver and constantly evolve and develop and change your course delivery as time goes on, as you pick up more information, as you see different things. All right. So competency-based, a box-ticking exercise, it is not. All right. It's not just about doing a turn at 100 feet instead of 150 in height maintenance and rolling out in 5 degrees instead of 10. All right, there's so much more to it than that. And then this is one of the big problems, and this is something we need to talk about with training delivery. But these are the things that need to be highlighted to instructors when they are delivering flight training. And this is on the ground discussion. All right, it's not about just jumping in the plane and doing stuff. That's an incredibly important part of it. But I spend more time probably on the ground in instructor training than I would in the aircraft. And this leads me to this bit of feedback that was given in the survey. So someone responded, the experience requirements are not necessarily the problem. There needs to be more focus on the educator development, i.e. developing the trainer. The industry has limited knowledge on how competency-based training works, let alone the underlying issues that come along with CBT. And I think I've just highlighted that point. And why? Because this information is actually out there. But if I were to ask anyone listening that is an instructor who's actually looked at, picked up and read AC 61-09, I'd argue probably very few of you. Who's actually read the Flight Crew Licensing Manual? Who's actually read the Flight Examiner Handbook? There's some really good information in that. And that is part of what I believe and what I'll be discussing at the seminar is the information in the Flight Examiner Handbook should be taught to instructors, because ultimately, even if we just do a box ticking exercise, we're not even doing that properly. Because how do you know what a flight examiner is looking for if you haven't read our manual? If you don't know what the standard's supposed to be and what we're looking for when we assess a student. So there's so much there that needs to go into. And again, like I said, I'm not going to have time to do all that today, but I just want to pull up some of these points to get you thinking about things. What are the solutions? All right, I would love to hear your feedback, and I'd love to have you at the seminar too. But some ideas, some things that we could possibly do. Increase real-world training opportunities for flight instructors. 100% needs to be figured out. We need to do that some way, shape, or form. All right, we need to implement some mentorship programs for flight instructors and flight examiners. Flight instructors will eventually become a flight examiner at some point. Not everyone, but some will. So we can start that process really early, because this all comes down to assessment. And again, a topic that we'll be talking about in the forum. Do we need to raise minimum experience requirements for some of the training endorsements, the advanced ones? For example, instrument rating, there are none. You could have an instrument rating, you could do it. Now, the idea, again, I just want to be fair, is that someone who just got it is obviously going to need a lot more training to deliver it than someone who's been an instrument pilot for some time. The idea is CASA are hoping that we'll capture that in the training. But still, I know that some of you have got instrument training endorsements and have been shitting bricks out there. Some schools are limiting the kind of IMC flying that you get to go in for instrument training to deal with instructors' lack of experience. I mean, how can that be going on right now? That is just crazy. That I'm going to give you an instrument rating, but only a little bit of instrument. It's just nuts. I get that sometimes you can do fair weather training. There's no clouds and weather around if you do it in the summertime. And I know some of you try and do that so that it's a little bit easier, but then you're only cheating yourselves. And then to say, you know what, I'm cool. I'm going to be an instructor now, and I'm going to go do my instrument training endorsement because that'll let me get some instrument time, and that'll be great for airlines and everything else later. But you got to stop and think, are you really suited for that right now? It's really something that you need to think about. Can we improve the competency-based training? I think most of it is pretty well laid out, to be honest, but maybe there's some tweaks that need to be done. But again, we all need to be doing the same thing and upholding the law, upholding the syllabus, upholding the delivery and the standards. Enhance ongoing professional development for instructors. There's very little in the way of professional development going on for instructors other than anything internal. And I know some organizations do that, which is fantastic. CASA are doing their videos and the webinars and that sort of stuff, but it's not necessarily specific for instructors. I think we need to be doing more there. So I'm going to start doing something myself there'll be some more information on that soon to get a bit of an instructor group going where we can meet every couple of months or something like that and maybe have a topic and all that sort of thing. It's all going to be coming soon. I will let you know about that in the next few episodes after the conference in July. All right. So hopefully that's sort of given you a bit of food for thought, guys. It's a massive topic and skim the surface there, but hopefully it's just got you thinking about things a little bit and you can sort of see how the system is supposed to be working and where it potentially isn't. All right. But, I know there's some schools that junior instructors are getting instructor training endorsements because there's no one else to do it. And then they're going to deliver instructor training. Like, how the hell can that even happen? I really believe that if we need to put some minimum hour requirements for a GA style environment to separate it from an airline style environment to permit certain training from happening, then I'm all for it, because you used to have to be a grade 1 before you could do that. Have some time extracting and doing stuff. To be a grade 2, you used to have NAV time. How can you be a grade 2 instructor and not have any NAV experience? That just doesn't make any sense to me either. All right. We need to really think about what the product of the instructor that we're trying to produce is. What do we want them to be able to do and be competent in themselves? And like I just said, the competency-based training should reflect the tasks that a person would do in real life or in the workplace. And I do not believe, on a whole, we are doing that properly. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. One final plug, July 1st and 2nd in Caboolture, Queensland. I would say normally beautiful weather, but it's probably going to be a little bit cool, but I will be there all the same. A fantastic bunch of presenters. Keep an eye on my Instagram, Facebook, jump on Strike Aviation, follow them too. There'll be info, flyers, all that sort of stuff coming out soon. It's $299 for the 2 days, plus your getting there costs. It's a bargain in the scheme of things. I know it all adds up, but look, if you're an instructor and you want to come along, ask the boss, try and get there. If you're a HOFO who check and trainer, if you're seeing the standards fall, if you're seeing the problems in industry, if you're, having to fail pilots because they're not getting through ICAS and everything else, and you want to help do something about it, it's not going to happen overnight, but there are some things that we can do very, very quickly. Other things are going to take time, but we need you there and we need your input. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Be safe. Have a fantastic week. And I will see you very, very soon. And don't forget to go and listen to Damien's podcast at HiflyMedia as well. All right, everyone. In the meantime, blue skies. And remember the golden rule. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, legends.